Revelation chapter 13 is where we're going to begin in just a moment. The message, the one world government of Antichrist. The one world government of Antichrist. Now, before we begin the message, let me very quickly set up, if you will allow this, what I call God's calendar of events for the future in order that you may fully understand the message. We're going to ask that you draw an imaginary diagram using some things here on the platform as points of contact. And in this way, you'll be able to understand what I'm going to preach in just a few minutes. Again, as we have in the past, we'll let the piano here and the organ here represent the 2 points of time known as the second coming of Jesus Christ. Because the second coming of Christ will take place in 2 separate events, making up a total second coming. We'll let the piano here represent the first part or the first half of the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is the second coming of Christ known as the known as the rapture. The rapture is the time, very simply, when Jesus will step out into the heavens with a shout. That shout being recorded in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1. Come up here. The trumpet of God will then sound at that same instant of time. The voice of the archangel will be heard. And my Bible says that in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, that every born-again Christian, whether they have already died or are still living on the earth, at that instant of time will be caught up to meet the Lord in the air, and the Bible says, so shall we ever be with the Lord. Now, the rapture is the next thing to take place on God's calendar of events for the future. The rapture could take place even tonight. All right, now watch. Draw you an imaginary line, if you will, from the piano here representing the rapture, the first part, the first half of the second coming. Draw an imaginary line across the platform with the idea that time is going this direction. Draw your line here to the organ. The organ will represent the second part of the second half of the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is the second coming of Christ known as the Revelation. The Revelation is simply the time when Jesus will come riding upon a white horse at all the way down to the world. Now, the difference between the rapture and the revelation is the fact that at the rapture, he stops in the spaces. Christians go up to meet him in the air, go back to be with him in heaven. At the revelation, he comes riding upon a white horse all the way down to the earth. The Christians that went up to meet him at the rapture also come riding upon white horses at that same time. The armies of the angels come with him as well. The first thing that Jesus does at the revelation when he comes all the way down to the earth is to fight the battle of Armageddon. The Battle of Armageddon is simply a battle of the world against God. It'll take place in the Middle East in the plains of Megiddo. Then, following the Battle of Armageddon, where the blood will flow to the bridles of the horses, Jesus sets up his throne, restoring the Temple of Solomon at that time. He judges the nations as to how they treated the Jews during the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period. He then also brings the Jewish people home at the same time. From all over the face of the earth, every Jew left alive following the tribulation period, and brings them back to the land promised to Abraham, what we call the Middle East completely today, not just Israel, but all the Middle East. Then draw your line from the organ from here all the way to the wall, because once Jesus does that, from that time forward, for a period of 1,000 years, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, will rule this world as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and Prince of Peace. All right, now the period of time represented by the imaginary line that you drew a while ago between the rapture and the revelation, this period of time is known as Daniel's 70th week of prophecy. We call it more commonly the 7-year tribulation period. Now the 7-year tribulation period is also divided into 2 sections of 3.5 years each, making up a total of 7 years. Now the reason for the division is very important in understanding the message. Listen carefully. My Bible says that in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, here's about halfway point, so we'll let the microphone here at the pulpit represent the middle, the halfway point of the tribulation period. But my Bible says in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, 3.5 years after Jesus comes at the rapture and takes all saved people home to be with him, that a man that God calls Antichrist will go to the city of Jerusalem. That man will enter into the Holy of Holies of the restored temple. And by the way, for what it's worth, many people don't know this, but a temple is right now being built in Jerusalem. It is in the process. Now, I'm going to have to do some backing up on some things that I've thought and believed in the years past. I always thought the Temple of Solomon had to be restored at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period. Antichrist would allow the Jews to start worshiping in the old temple fashion with the sacrifices and blood sprinkled on the altar and all of it. And I thought it would be in the old temple site. But I found in Zechariah, that the Temple of Solomon won't be rebuilt until Jesus comes to rule the world for 1,000 years. And you can further find more proof of that in Isaiah chapter 43 through 45. So, the temple that the Jews will worship in during the 7-year tribulation period apparently is not going to be Solomon's temple rebuilt. That won't be rebuilt until Jesus comes to rule the world. But since April of 1975, the Jews have been building a temple, and it's going up. And I'm anxious to see it. Here's an unusual thing. They're in the process of building it right now. It's called Jerusalem Great Synagogue. And it will be. It's built just like the old temple, except it's more modern, more massive, and it's unbelievable that it has many of the Old Testament characteristics, even something concerning blasphemy in it. And Antichrist will blaspheme that temple one day. Now, he will enter into that temple. He will kick over the ark of the altar of God in the Holy of Holies, set a statue, an image up of himself, and demand that the world worship him as God. Now, when he does that, the Bible says, then shall there be great tribulation. The last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period is going to be the most horribly destructive period of time the world's ever known. Now, watch. Hey, in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, when he enters into the Holy of Holies of that temple and sets a statue or an image up of himself, in a minute I'll tell you a little bit about it. He also at that time will set up his one world government system by force. And a one world church system by force will be set up at the same time. You can see the beginnings of the one world church system. It's called the ecumenical movement. Now listen to me carefully. You may not like this, but it's still true. The fact of the matter is, a one world church idea would be impossible except that in the last 2 years, there is a movement that has come alive in our world that is going to bring about a one-world church, where divided religions are throwing away what they believe, and they're going strictly on what they experience. I believe with all my heart, the one thing that's going to make a one-world church possible is the charismatic movement. Brother, there are charismatic Catholics, charismatic Presbyterians, Seventh-day Adventists, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Methodists, charismatic Baptists. They're everywhere. In Dallas, Texas next summer, there will be the first Southern Baptist Charismatic Conference in Dallas, Texas. This thing is sweeping not only our nation, but the world. And it's going to bring about a one-world church of Antichrist. Put it down. All right, now watch. In the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, that one-world government system will be set up by force. When it happens again, the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period will be the most horribly destructive period of time the world's ever known since the beginning of the world, according to the Bible. It's so destructive, listen to this. If you could total up the different figures related in the books of prophecy, you'll find and discover that almost 3/4 of the entire population of the world will be wiped out, will be killed in one way or another during the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period. Right now, one of the biggest concerns of the world is the population explosion. I know exactly what's going to take care of the population explosion. It's called Great Tribulation. Not only that, did you know that 2/3 of all the Jews in our world will also be killed during those last 3.5 years? Only 1/3 of all the Jewish people in the world will live through the tribulation period. 2/3 of them will be killed. That last 3.5 years will be so horrible, as a matter of fact, the Bible says that there's a 6-month period in the last 3.5 years when God will remove the death angel from this world, and people will be unable to die for 6 months. No matter what they do, they won't even be able to commit suicide. Can you imagine somebody committing suicide or attempting to, leaping from a skyscraper and bursting their insides out on a sidewalk below that building? But for 6 months, no matter how grotesque they may be and no matter how horrible the pain, they will not be able to die. I don't know about you, but I say, thank God I'm not going to be here. I'm going home to be with Jesus at the rapture. And I'm going to prove to you that, thank God, the second coming of Jesus Christ is unbelievably near and could take place even tonight. Listen to me carefully. Let's read, if you will, in Revelation chapter 13, concerning the one world government of Antichrist. John, speaking by the Holy Spirit, says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea." A beast is a world government system according to Bible prophecy, Daniel chapter 7. verse 3 and verse 17. Saw a beast or a world government system rise up out of the sea, or masses of the people of the world, having 7 heads, or 7 nations, and 10 horns, or 10 kings. A horn in Bible prophecy is a king, according to Daniel 7, verse 24. Now, John, by the Holy Spirit, in this book of prophecy, in this chapter, states the fact that he saw in his vision, he saw a world government system evolve out of a group of nations, a league of nations. He said, interesting enough, he said there were 7 nations but 10 kings. Now, how can you have 7 nations but 10 kings ruling? You've got 3 kings too many. All right, now listen carefully. The Bible teaches us during the tribulation period, after Jesus comes at the rapture, one of the very first things that will happen is that there will be in our world at that time, and whether it takes place just before the rapture or just after the rapture, I'm not sure. But the Bible teaches that there will be a league of 10 nations. It's Daniel's federation of 10 nations. This league of 10 nations will be the old Roman Empire come back from the dead. Most Bible theologians believe that what we're seeing today, called the European economic market, is the beginning of that League of 10 Nations. I believe the same. Right now there are 9 countries in the European common market, not 10. There are 9. All right, now watch. They only need 1 more. In a few minutes I'll tell you who it's going to be. Now, stay with me. At the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, there will be a League of 10 Nations. Now, Daniel tells us in his prophecy that a man that God calls Antichrist, the little horn, the little king. And an Antichrist is, number 1, he has to be a Jew. Juan Carlos is not going to be Antichrist. He's not a Jew, as some people are trying to tell us today. Antichrist, number 2, has got to be a man born in one of the old European empire countries. In other words, what we would call primarily one of the European countries today. Number 3, Antichrist has to be a little horn, or a little king, or a little politician, as we would call him today. He is not the head of a nation, but he's a politician within a nation. Number 4, Antichrist has to be a man that becomes known as a world peacemaker. The hope of the world for peace will rely on that one man. All right, now stay with me. God says that this man, Antichrist, goes to the League of 10 Nations at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period. And he goes to them, and according to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 8 and verse 24, he plucks up 3 of the 10 nations by the roots, leaving only 7 nations. But now we read in Revelation chapter 13 and verse 1 that he did not kill the kings. So it was not a military victory, but he did something that dissolved those 3 out of 10 countries. He dissolved 3 of them, so they were no longer called nations by the rest of the world. But he allowed the 3 kings to still live and to rule. Well, now how can you have 10 kings ruling 7 nations? It don't make sense. There. I believe with all my heart the answer came in February of 1974. In February of 1974, just 3 months following the beginning of the energy crisis, the Arab nations informed the 9 common market countries that they would no longer sell oil to 3 of those countries, 3 of the 9. An emergency meeting of the common market was called. These 9 leaders got together and for several weeks debated and discussed what they would do about the new problem. After some weeks, they came up with a solution. An unusual solution. Here's what they decided. The 6 leaders out of the 9 said to the 3 that we're no longer going to be able to buy oil, and a nation cannot exist without oil. You'll be destroyed without oil. They told the 3, here's what we're going to do. We will dissolve your 3 nations. We will take away your name. We will take away your border. We will then annex you within our borders. You will take our borders, you will take our name of the other 6 countries. And you will then no longer be called a nation by the rest of the world for these 3. Much like a city annexes the suburbs for the purpose of taxes, it brought them within. Okay. They stated, you'll no longer be called a nation by the rest of the world, but then the 6 leaders told the 3, don't worry, even though we take away your borders and your name, we'll still let you rule your own people just like you really were a country. And you can use our oil. We'll just buy a little bit more. All right, now watch. Hey, my Bible says that at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period that a man that God calls Antichrist would go to the League of 10 Nations, dissolve 3 of them, but still have 10 kings with only 7 nations. How can you have it? I believe the answer came with the common market decision in February of 1974. For almost 2 years now, we have seen how this is going to be possible. Listen to me. If I stopped right there, that would be enough to prove to me that, thank God, Jesus is coming. But that's not all. Listen carefully. At that same emergency meeting of the common market session, they had a man give an unusual speech. They voted on a leader for the common market, and this is what was stated. Henry Spack, who was the early planner of the European Common Market and at that time was also Secretary General of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Henry Spack made this statement. He said, "We do not want another committee for the European Common Market to try to solve our problems." He said, "What we want is a man." Hey, and the truth of the matter is, every nation of the world would give their eye teeth to have a man in office, even America. We haven't had a man as President of the United States of America in office for a long time. Where's the Washingtons? God give us a man like Lincoln. We don't have any men in office anymore. Now we've got politicians. And the world right now is screaming for a leader. We're ripe for a leader. The interesting thing is that my Bible tells me at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period that a man that God calls Antichrist will become the leader of the 10 federated nations or the European Common Market. And that man in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period will become the leader of the world, a one-world government leader. That man is Antichrist. And the Bible says that that man, in order to do that, will become possessed by the devil. He is a devil-possessed man, according to Revelation chapter 13, verse 2, and Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. Now, this devil-possessed man will eventually rule the world 3.5 years after Jesus comes. All right, now stay with me. Henry Spack stated this, I quote again, he said, "We do not want another committee. We have too many committees already. What we want is a man of sufficient stature to hold the allegiance of all people, not only the European Common Market people, but all the people of the world eventually. A man that can lift us out of the economic mess into which we're sinking. The economy is going to kill us. Inflation, recession, depression. Watch it now. To lift us out of the economic mess into which we are sinking. Then he said, "Send us such a man, and be he God or devil, and we will receive him." He said, we don't care if he's the devil in human flesh, just so he can solve our problems. Do you know what? It's interesting that the Bible says that the world will accept a devil man. And 2 years ago, almost, that's exactly what they said they'd be willing to have. I don't know about you, but I say, thank God Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. Now, if you're going to have a one-world government system, you first got to bring nations together and unite them together. Right now, there are 9 countries in the European Common Market. At the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, after Jesus comes at the rapture, there'll be 10. Those 10 nations will evolve into a one-world government system in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period. Now, if there's 9 countries in the common market right now, that means we need one more. I believe with all my heart that the United States of America is going to be the 10th nation in the European common market. Why do you think President Ford has spent so much time in Europe this year? Do you know that in the year of 1975, President Ford has spent over 3 weeks, almost 3.5 weeks, in Europe. In May, he spent a week there at a special emergency meeting for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. And the reason being, NATO's falling apart. Turkey's out. Portugal wants out. Portugal is out, rather. And other nations are wanting out. NATO is going to explode in our face. Now you say, so what? What's that got to do with us? Well, it's very simple. You may not understand foreign policy, but this much you do know. America, in order to keep our position in the world, we've got to have some influence in what Europe does. We need a foothold in Europe with military bases and so forth, like we have there now, in order to keep tabs on Russia. Okay, the way we are in Europe and have any influence in foreign policy is through the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But if the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, if NATO explodes and falls apart and dissolves, that means America's got to get out of Europe completely. And America's not going to do that. But NATO is going to dissolve. NATO will explode. And when NATO falls apart, where's America going then? There's only one place in Europe she can go. she'll become the 10th nation in the European Common Market. You say, yeah, but I thought all of those nations had to be descended to the old Roman Empire. We wasn't in part of the old Roman Empire. Yes, we were, because we came out of Great Britain, and Great Britain was part of the old Roman Empire. America will be the 10th nation in the European Common Market, and we've been working for it for a long time. December the 12th, 1973, Henry Kissinger, Dr. Henry Kissinger, speaking to world leaders in London, England, stated this. He stated, because of the energy crisis that had just begun, a little over a month before that, Henry Kissinger said to the leaders of the world, he said, we must join together, the United States of America, Europe, Canada, and Japan. At that time, he included 2 others. But he said, we must all join together and become one people, or the Arabs will end up defeating us, not the Russians. He called, as Walter Cronkite put it on the nationwide news that night, he said, what Henry Kissinger has suggested has staggered the world, because he is suggesting a superstate, or a one-world government system. We've been getting ready for it for some time, for several years. Now watch. President Ford spent a week in May in the European Common Markets countries with this special emergency meeting of NATO. The first week of June, he went back and spent a week in Brussels, which just happens to be the headquarters for the European Common Market. In July, President Ford went back again to Europe just to put his good face forward and put his best image forward for the American public in view of the European community. Wanted the European community to have a good impression of America. Just a few days ago, President Ford met again for the emergency economic meeting in France, in Paris, at the invitation of Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, the French Prime Minister, with 4 other European countries meeting with them, 3 others, and one of them Japan. Now watch. These men are concerned. There are 3 major problems in our world. There's economic, which means financial. There's the energy problem, and then there's the food problem. And these men saying, we have got to get together. We have got to get together. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing and Helmut Schmidt of Germany and the other leaders of the 9 common market countries want America in the European Common Market. And we're going to do it. We're getting ready for it. You say, how do you know that? Because, watch this, the world government standards are many and varied. And I want to tell you 2 or 3 of them quickly as we close the message. Now stay with me. The first standard of the world government system, you must remember that the one world government system that will be set up by force 3.5 years after Jesus comes will evolve out of the European Common Market. So the world government system will have to have European standards as its system, right? Okay. We are right now getting ready to accept one major world government system that every nation of the world has already accepted. America is the only nation that has not accepted this standard. But Congress says that we will accept this world government standard September 1976. That's next September. Hear me. That standard is the metric system. We're seeing it everywhere. It's all around you. In the public schools, your kids right now are being taught the metric system. I have photographs, as we used on television, on the broadcast for public viewing across America. I have photographs of the international traffic signs. You've seen them. You drive your car to them. Where the sign says no U-turn, no left turn, there's a circle around an arrow pointed whatever direction that would be, and a line drawn through it, which means you can't turn that way. And then the letters printed underneath. Outside the city of Cleveland, Ohio, between Cleveland, Ohio and Columbus, they're right now on Interstate 71 putting up kilometer signs. And here it's Cleveland, Ohio, 94 miles. Underneath it says in huge letters, just as large as the rest, 151 kilometers. We're getting ready for it. State signs are being changed right now. In Norfolk, Virginia, same way there. You drive from the suburbs, from one suburb to the other. It is now so many kilometers to the next little town, to the next suburb. It's everywhere. And all the states will eventually have this thing. Congress says officially by September 1976, we'll have all of this instituted. The metric system is one of the major systems of that. We're getting ready for it. America is going to join the European Common Market. And our congressmen and our leaders know it. It's a must in order to pull us out of the financial mess we're in. Also, if you're going to have a one world government system, you not only have to have the same system of weights and measurements, like the kilometers, and instead of ounces, we use grams now, as you'll find on products in the stores and so forth. But you're also going to have a system of a one world currency. The one world currency system has been prepared for over 8 years. The one world currency has been printed for over 8 years. Listen to me. Many financial leaders tell us that we will be using, even here in America, a one world currency system before the end of 1976. It's that near. But if you're going to have a world government system, everybody's got to use the same kind of money. But wait a minute. Hey, if everybody's going to use the same kind of money, where are you going to get the means to do away with the money we've got? That's easy. You have inflation that'll eat away the value of your money, that'll lead to recession, where prices go up instead of going down, even though the value of the money goes down. And the third step in that partnership of inflation and recession, the third step is automatically depression. There is going to be a depression, and there's no way in the world we can get around it. We're headed for it right now. Your American dollar is worth less than 25 cents right now. That's inflation. But prices keep going up. Would it make sense if the government just said, look, I don't care what anybody else says, thinks, or what, because of inflation, all the prices are going to have to be lowered? That's the logical thing to do, but they always have very good reasons why they have to raise them instead of lowering them. The reason is there's going to be a depression. Now, it's interesting that our governmental leaders are telling us that we are on the path to recovery, that we're pulling out of recession. Isn't that nice? If that's true, then why has the United States government been prepared for an economic crash for over 2.5 years? Dr. Franz Pick, the most noted economist in our world today, stated on May of 1973, 2 years ago he made this statement. In May of 1973, he stated there is going to be an economic crash, and it'll affect all the monies of the world, including America. Every nation, their particular monies will be destroyed overnight. And he said, and America will not be excluded. He said, most Americans don't know it, but he said the government's been getting ready for this for some time. He said that the United States government already has the new United States currency printed. They're just waiting for the collapse. They're waiting for the depression. Do you know the new currency for the United States of America? The dollar bill will stay green. Now, this is the stuff's already printed. If we're not going to have a crash, then why did they print it? They know we are, because it'd be like you going down and borrowing $1 million. Could you pay it back? You say, no, I can never pay anything back like that. Okay, well, that's what we've done. We've borrowed so much money as a government from the international bankers, we'll never pay it back. We can't even pay back the interest, much less the principal. And so we're going to end up with a default. There'll be a depression. Now watch. The dollar bill is going to stay green. It is green. The $5 bill will be blue. It's printed blue already. The new $10 bill will be beige brown. The $20 bill will be red. And for what it's worth, currencies in Europe right now are different colored. We're going to change over to the same idea. But watch. You say, you mean the crash will come and America will start using this and everybody will get this new kind of money in different colors and so forth? No, I don't think so. Personally, because of what I know the Bible teaches and what I know what's happening in our world as well as in our particular nation, I believe that when the crash comes, instead of us using the new currency printed already, for 2.5 years it's been printed, we will just make an agreement with the European Common Market, and the rest of the nations of the world will all use the same kind of money, and we'll change over, all of us, to the one world currency that's already printed. All right, now listen. Is there going to be a depression? We've got the money printed. The government knows it's coming. Also, January 1975, for the first time in 40 years, the United States of America began selling gold to the American public. Why? I believe the answer came in April of 1975. Senator Whitehouse of Virginia made this statement. Senator Whitehouse stated, he said, it's about time the American public knew what was going on. This was 2 months after the gold started being sold in America to the public. He said, senators and congressmen, leaders in Washington are buying gold like it's going out of style. He went on to state, he said, my wife and I are buying all the gold we can. He said, because all the senators and all the congressmen know, as I know, there's going to be a crash. There's going to be a depression. And the only thing that will have any value will be gold and silver following the crash. And he said, we're buying all the gold and silver we can. And every senator is, except they're doing it secretly. And he said, and my conscience has gotten the best of me. And he said, and I think that the rest of America needs to know it. Now you listen to me. Hey, when the congressmen and our senators and governmental leaders in Washington begin to bail out, I guarantee it's about time the rest of us woke up. Listen to me. Dead sure there's going to be a depression. And when the depression comes, you say, when will it come? Noted economists in our world and in our nation are stating, this is their prediction, not mine, they are stating that the depression will be here by the end of 1975, by the middle of 1976 at the latest. And if you'll do some thinking, isn't it unusual that a major city called New York City seems to teeter-totter back and forth from the edge of disaster, bankruptcy, and default? You say, but we've bailed it out. For how long? We're in trouble. We're in trouble. Where did we get the money to bail them out? We got to get the money from there, from the government, from the people, and we got to borrow it. We're just making our debts even greater. We're in a mess, and the only way out is depression. Hey, a depression would bring about overnight a one-world currency. You say, everybody's going to start carrying a one-world currency, right? No, that's the unusual thing about it, because people will not carry cash. With the new one-world currency, it'll be kept in certain banks and will only be used by banks, not by people. Not every bank in America or the world will have the actual money. All they will have is a system called paper gold that went into effect in the United States of America just over a year and a half ago. Much of the rest of the world is already using it. Paper gold is nothing but a book account. That's all it is. They don't have any money. They just give you credit for having so much in another bank. And we're seeing that system right now in operation. Hear me. Hey, did you know that in our world today there is a system that's made it possible that you can buy without money? We've been getting ready for it in our banking systems through two things called MasterCharge and Bank AmeriCard. It's been getting us used to buying by number and not using cash. But computer technology has advanced to the point that today there is a substitute for paper money. Now watch. How are you going to do it? Look at Revelation chapter 13, if you will, and verse 16 and 17. The Bible says that Antichrist and his system will use this. He said, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now that mark is a number. Now the number is 666 if you'd read on down in verse 18. All right, now watch. But the system financially that will be used by Antichrist is so advanced in our world today that it's alarming. It's staggering. If I was an unsaved person, I'd be scared to death because of knowing what I know in our world today. I'm going to show you how far advanced this thing is. In the last few months, we have taken steps that are unbelievable in the respect that we're drawing so close to the world government system. Now, computers in our world have reached the point that they are beyond description, just to be honest. They're beyond the imagination. You can't figure it out, and I can't either. But there is a computer system in our world that many people have tried to deny, and there's been much work, and I believe by the devil, to confuse people about whether or not this thing really exists. And I've had the thing verified now just recently in the last few days through some unusual sources. And the computer, the beast, this giant computer in Brussels does exist, apparently. They tell us it's 3 blocks long and it's 10 feet high. It's 1 city square block. is the building, the administration building of the Common Market Confederacy in Brussels. And this computer takes up one whole floor, one length of that whole building, a city block, 30 feet, a block long, and it's 10 feet high. But it's on 3 different floors. That's the reason if you stacked it up, it'd be 30 feet high. All right, now watch. The computer, this giant computer, is called the Beast. And it has come up with a system whereby you can number 4 billion people. And the way you number 4 billion people, according to this computer, is to give them a number much like a bank account number. And that bank account number is in the form of six numbers in 3 different groups. Or in other words, like your bank account, there'd be 6 numbers, dash, 6 numbers in the middle, dash, 6 numbers in the last group. If you do some quick figuring, you've got 6, 6, 6. It just so happens that the Federal Reserve System of the United States of America is right now on alert. They are waiting to put this very same system into operation here in the United States of America through the banks. And this number, according to the facts and figures that we have in America through the Federal Reserve, but also through the one in Brussels, this computer has decided the way to give people a number is not by cards, because cards can be stolen, but you tattoo a number invisibly with a laser tattoo either on the back of their right hand or on their forehead. The number will be invisible. Now, you say, preacher, that's not possible. We don't know a way in this world we've ever come to that. And they couldn't do it here in America if they wanted to. I have here an article taken from the American Bar Association Journal dated January 1975. A lawyer heard me preach in Atlanta, Georgia, this message I'm preaching today. And he sent me a copy in the month of February of the American Bar Association Journal for January. The article is headlined this. Listen carefully. Abolish paper money and you'll eliminate most crime. Now, we just had recently the government statistics put out on the fact that crime increased this past year in the greatest percentage ever recorded. Politicians are screaming, saying the one thing we need solved in our nation of America today is the crime problem. You know why they're saying that? Because most Americans don't know it, but for almost 1 year now, legislation has and is being prepared that will be placed before Congress that will literally do away with paper money. Abolish paper money, quit using paper money in America, and you'll stop crime. Just one statement in the article reads like this. Fortunately, technology has advanced to the point that today there is a substitute for paper money. Guess what the substitute is? A number. Guess where it's going to be? Invisibly tattooed on the back of your right hand or on your forehead. And they are going to pass a law, listen to this, whereby every American, whether they have a bank account or not, by law will be forced to have a bank account number tattooed on their head, on the back of their hand. You're going to have a bank account number whether you want it or not. Hey, brother, we're getting ready for it. Now, just to be honest, the system is not a bad idea. There's nothing wrong with the system. That's not the point I'm making. Stop and think about it. If you took away money and everybody had to buy by numbers that wasn't on cards, it would be a good idea, because you couldn't steal money and you couldn't steal cards. Can you imagine some guy grabbing you by the lapel of your coat, dragging you into an alley, stuffing a gun up under your chin and say, okay, buddy, cut off your right hand. I got to buy something. You know. It won't happen. All right, that just makes sense. Now, listen carefully. Hey, the system is a good idea. Nothing wrong with the system. But the point I'm trying to make is that we can see the preparations for this system right now, and the staggering thing is that the Bible says this is the system that Antichrist is going to be using by force 3.5 years after Jesus comes at the rapture, which means, thank God, Jesus is coming. That's what it means. Now, you say, how in the world is this going to happen, preacher? If the number's invisible, how is it going to be used? Well, the number, according to the information that we have, the number will only show up under infrared scanners to be placed at all checkout counters and places of business. This is what the computer cash registers are for. Now, I've been preaching this now for about 2 years, but I'm getting ready to tell you some things that have become so advanced in the last few weeks that we're only one step away from the infrared scanners. Listen to me carefully. The computer cash registers that you're seeing today put up in grocery stores and department stores, places of business, even the burger chains have got them. Everybody's got them. Every last one of those computer cash registers can be linked up and are being linked up by telephone cable to major bank computers in the central location of the state. Many states of the United States of America already have this system in operation, where the individual banks of the towns, even the small towns, are connected by telephone cable to one major bank in the center part of the state. Now, this I do know for a fact. Many states in the last few months have already instituted this. But in Alabama, this is what it's like, and all the rest of them are doing it. Before the end of next year, they tell us that every state will be hooked up in this way. In the state of Alabama, in order to do any business at all in a bank, you don't do it there primarily, but in order to get it approved, you have to get it approved by the major bank in Birmingham. They send your name and account number and information, what you want and so forth, to the bank in Birmingham. In less than 10 seconds, they'll come back with the information that'll tell you everything about yourself. They tell you everything about you from the day you were born until the very day you want to do business. You say, where'd you get all that information? Got it from you. Filling out all the credit bureau information, department store, credit cards, public school information. Have you ever wondered why in the public schools your kids used to go to the public school and they'd have to know all this information about where you worked, how much you made, and all this stuff, and you went ahead and filled it in? Senators this year, for the first time they've come out in the open this year, senators have been screaming bloody murder and said the American public is stupid. You shouldn't tell the schools anything except the name of your kid and where they live. Now they tell us, after they know everything about us. All right? Now watch. In Alabama, within 10 seconds, it'll tell you everything about the person wanting to do business. And it'll let you know whether or not you can do the business. But the computer in Birmingham is like the one in Brussels, except it's smaller. It is also like the one at a place called Site R. In the United States of America, there is a place called Site R. Site R is located halfway between Washington, D.C. and Hagerstown, Maryland. Site R, for all outward appearances, is nothing but a huge cave in the side of a mountain. It's near Camp David. Now, what Site R is simply a city built under a mountain. It has 6 stories. It's 6 stories high, or I guess really 6 stories deep would be the way to put it. It is the offices for the government that has right now information on every citizen of the United States of America. It is there primarily, they say, the major purpose is in the event of invasion or atomic attack. Site R has in one major building, just one of those buildings in that city, Site R has one floor taken up by a huge computer, in which every computer in the United States of America, banking businesses and all of the whole thing, will eventually be linked. And that one can be linked to Brussels. All right, now watch. In Birmingham, the computer is similar to the one inside R, in the respect that it does this. They say it's alive. It can talk. Now, Revelation chapter 13, verse 14 and 15 tell us that the image of the beast of the world government system has 2 characteristics. Verse 14, it said that they should make an image to the beast which had a wound by the sword and did live. And verse 15, and he, Antichrist, had power to give life unto the image of the beast. Now, the image of the beast, or the image of the world government system, I believe, is a computer. Why? Because it has 2 characteristics. Here's the life characteristics. That the image of the beast should both speak, that's the first thing it can do, it can talk, and secondly, cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Or in other words, it knows everything about everybody. It can talk, and it knows everything about everybody. Now listen to me. The computer in Birmingham, Alabama, they say it's alive because it talks. You say, in other words, a little teletype, ticker tape thing comes out, and they read out what it says, what it types. No, it's got a voice. It speaks, so you can listen. You say, in other words, there's got tape recordings in there, and it can only say what's on the tape recorders. No. It makes up its own words and its own sentences. It thinks for itself. There are times when this computer will say, I have a part that is malfunctioning. That part only has so many days, so many hours, so many minutes to live. You can find that part in such and such a panel of my inward workings. In order to replace that part, you'll need part number so-and-so. In order to install that part, you'll need such and such a tool. And then the computer says to its operators while they stand there, it says, "Please fix me." They say it's alive. Computers are talking. It's interesting to me that your pastor showed me an article, I've got it here, that was in the Wilmington, Delaware Evening Journal, November 26, 1975. It's in the business section of that paper. It states, "Bank's computer has the answers." From Chicago, it states, "You soon will be able to talk with your bank's computer." And it goes on and down, and it talks about what you'll say to the bank and computer. You talk back and forth. Now, this in some areas is a little slow coming, but in many of the other areas of the nation, this is already happening. You can do this in Chattanooga right now. You talk to computers. Now, hang on a minute, and I'll tell you what you'll say to them. So you'll be well prepared on how to be sociably acceptable with a computer, okay? Hang on. All right, now watch. This computer system is alive. And the places of business will all be hooked up by telephone cable to computers just like that. And all business will be done in this way. All right, now stay here. Listen carefully. We are seeing the beginnings of it with the computer cash registers. In February of 1975, Newsweek magazine carried an unusual article. Listen carefully. Newsweek magazine carried an article that reads like this, February 17th, 1975. Pushing a basket of groceries with one hand, trying to control her squirming children with the other, a harried Mrs. Robert Colum was fervently hoping for a quick exit when she finally reached the checkout counter of a Fort Worth Piggly Wiggly store one day last week. She got her quick exit. Listen to this. An IBM Model 3660 electronic checkout system had flashed on a screen the description and price of each item from Mrs. Colum's basket, totaled her bill, $14.62, even informed her of the number of trading stamps she could collect, 46, gave her an itemized list of everything she bought by name and the actual price she paid for each item, and it did it all in 20 seconds. This system, this was talked about in February of 1975. That system right now, at the end of 1975, is being implemented in 70, almost 75% of the United States of America right now. You're getting ready for it, and everybody else is too, because it's another standard of the world government system. What's going to make this thing possible and make it work is what you see on every product you buy in the grocery store called the Universal Product Code. It's a little box with lines running up and down. Some lines are a little darker than others, and underneath each one of those lines is a number. And it makes it possible that electronically you can record in these cash registers in a matter of seconds everything you've got in your grocery basket. The Universal Product Code is just another standard of the world government system that we're rapidly pushing towards. Hey, listen to this. There is right now being installed, hear me, being installed in every grocery store in the United States of America, a new system called Electric Funds Transfer System. The Electric Funds Transfer System, listen to me, is the next step or the final step just before the infrared scanners go into use. Now, every one of those computer cash registers, according to cash register executives that I've talked to in one city after another, every one of them has either an open space for inserting a box in order for you to have the infrared scanner there, or it has, secondly, a plug by which you would set the box beside the cash register and just plug it into the cash register itself. Now, the interesting thing is that this computer system is simply for the purpose of paying your bill. Now, the Universal Product Code and the electronic system makes it possible to total your bill in a matter of seconds. But instead of reaching in your pocket and paying with cash and counting it out or writing out a check, the infrared scanner system will mean that you will simply have photographed, you'll hold up your hand beside your face so that it can get the view of it. It'll electronically record that invisible number, either on your hand or your forehead. Those cash registers, every one of them, have that capability right now. All they have to do is to be installed, all right? But the electric funds transfer system is doing away with all of your cashing of checks in the stores. Do you know that we cash, or rather our banks handle almost over 29 billion checks every year, and it's got to be stopped. And they are stopping it. The electronic funds transfer system is you can no longer cash a check in your store through the grocer. If you want to cash a check, you have to go over to this computer in the store and you record electronically by pushing buttons. You record your account number, the amount the check is, and so forth, and electrically it goes to your bank and comes back in a matter of seconds and lets the person there notifies that person whether or not you've really got the money to cover that check in your bank or not. And if you don't, you can forget it. You ain't going to get it. Now, the electronic funds transfer system is the next step before the infrared scanners, and that's being set up right now. The infrared scanner system with a number on the hand and everything will be the system of Antichrist, but we're getting ready for it right now. Oh, listen to me. Thank God Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. Now, stay with me. Hear me. Here's the last thing I'll say. Did you know that it's going to be very soon when all of your paychecks and everything will be deposited straight to the bank? There is a system right now called automated clearinghouses that are being set up in every state of the United States of America. It means that you give, much like you do right now for insurance payments and for certain things, you give the bank the authority to take money out of your account. They're going to enlarge that, so you give the bank the authority to pay all of your bills through the automated clearinghouses. Now, this is being set up right now also. Here's the idea. Here's what's going to happen. You will no longer pay by check or by cash. You will pay through computers. You actually talk to them. Checks will be deposited like the Social Security check is right now. By the middle of next year, all Social Security checks in the United States of America will be deposited straight to that person's bank. They'll never even see the check. And they do it electronically through computers. Hey, they won't even mail the checks. What they'll do, they'll just, from the offices of the Social Security and so forth, and the government, they will just electronically record it with your bank. All right? In places of business, they're going to do that same thing. You'll give them the authority, they'll do it, and you'll also give the bank authority to pay for it. We have right now that system working in the respect, in many cities, many states, New York City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, many major cities like this across America are now using the system. Here's the one in Pittsburgh. This system, it says, brings checkless banking a step nearer. Now, it's very similar to what your pastor handed me earlier concerning talking to computers. The way you're going to pay your bills in the future, stay with me, is the fact that everybody is going to be forced by law to accept, everybody with a bank account will be forced by law to accept eventually the push-button telephone. Now, don't go out and rip out your push-button telephone. There ain't nothing wrong with it. It's a good deal. Stops cramps of the finger and so forth. You don't get hangnails and what have you. It's a good idea. Nothing wrong with a push-button telephone. I like it. I'd like to have one. But if you'll notice on the push-button telephone, you got 2 buttons too many. Now, you say, why? So the answer is very simple. Watch this. One of those 2 buttons that are extra, on the right side, you'll find at the bottom corner, the right side, you'll find the button has a tic-tac-toe design without the X's and the zeros, you know. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Everybody knows what that is. Okay, stands for number. All right? The other button on the bottom left-hand corner has a 6-point star. All right? Now, here's how you're going to pay your bills in the future. In Washington, Oregon, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Ohio, many states, New York, are right now using this system, and all the other states are getting ready to follow. You'll pick up your phone. In order to pay your bills, you will push the button that looks like tic-tac-toe design. The phone rings. Somebody answers on the other end. You are not talking to a person at the bank. You're talking to the computer. It's a funny, strange sounding voice, but that's who you're talking to. You're talking to a computer. The computer says, please record electronically your account number. Now, your bank account number, you say, how do you do that? You use the numbers, the other numbers on the push-button phone to record it. Now, in case there's anybody here that wants to deposit $100,000 to my bank account, please listen carefully while I give my bank account number. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, the American National Bank, please deposit to account, here it is, 055. You say, how are you going to have the dash? because every bank account is in three groups with dashes in between. That's what the star is for. It's for the dash. So I would go 055, push the star, meaning dash. 332, push the star, meaning dash 1. Now that's my bank account number. And the computer says, what bills do you want to pay? Well, you want to pay your light bill. You say, I want to pay the electric company. How much is it? The computer says, please electronically record that. Okay, how are you going to tell the computer what to pay? So there's no mistakes. You push the buttons. I want to pay them $10.36. That's how much I owe them. Okay, so you push 1, 0, and for the decimal point, you push the star. And then 36, $10.36. You list every bill you want to pay. By the way, that's how you'll eventually pay your church, your tithes and offerings. But if the law is passed that does away with church exemption for taxes, nonprofit organizations, so forth, if the law is passed that does away with that, and also the law is passed that is being prepared and trying to be forced through, and you listen to me right now, brother, they're getting ready to take away your kids. There is a new law, the name slips my mind right now, but whereby they can legally, by government, court action, take away your children if you try to make your kids go to church and they don't want to. Legally, by law, if you want to make your kids clean their broom up and they don't want to, they can take your kid away from you. If they pass this law, and this law is to be passed the 1st of 1976. And any church that would violate and encourage people to go against anything, you can't even spank your kid, or they'll take them away from you. The government will. That's the law right now being prepared. Now hear me. If you refuse to go along with those ideas as a church, the National Council of Churches, and refuse to join up with it, because the National Council of Churches is the in group with our government right now, you refuse to go along with that, they will also pass a law that nobody can contribute to a church that would be detrimental to the service and the conscience of the community. So if you said, well, I want to give so much money to my church, and it's a fundamental Bible-believing church like this one, the computer said, I'm sorry, you can't do that. How's the church going to operate? It won't be able to. See where we're headed? Okay, you list all that you want to pay, and then the computer says, are there any other bills? You state, no, there are not. There's some sound of mechanisms going. The computer then states, your bills have now been paid. Your balance has been altered. A statement will be sent concerning your new balance. Thank you for your business, and the computer hangs up on you. How about that? They need to teach computers the manners, and who needs to know that? Now watch. What am I saying? You know exactly what I'm saying is true. You know these things are around us. Maybe you did not know what they were. These are right now the advanced things up through November 1975 that we're seeing in our world today, and especially our nation. All of these things are heading us towards but one thing, and that is a one world government system. And all of these things will be in use, dead sure, 3.5 years after Jesus comes at the rapture by Antichrist. They'll be set up by force. But thank God, 3.5 years before that one world government system with these very things happening actually comes into being, I'm going home to be with Jesus. Now you listen to me. You better wake up. Thank God, if you don't believe anything else, believe the Bible and believe what you see in the world today, because it's a warning that Jesus is coming. If you're going to get saved, you better get saved. If you're going to sell out to God as a Christian and have Bible standards as your way of living, and if you're going to reach your loved ones and friends for Jesus Christ, you better do it now before it's too late.